Hi guys, welcome to grounding practice. So grounding practice is us practicing our tools to help when you need some grounding. So us practicing our tools and learning how to use tools and learning the tools um, for when you have a panic attack, for when you are anxious, for when you are stressed out, for when you've had flashbacks or nightmares or just all kinds of any sort of trigger that happens in your life. So that's what grounding practice is. So we are practicing our grounding. What you'll need today for your grounding practice is grab your journal or your notebook. You can use your feelings worksheet if you'd like. You can also use your words worksheets, today I feel positively, or the feelings inventory, that sort of thing. I'll put those in the description box down below. You can go and then download those off of the specific sites. So you can grab that stuff, but we're not going to use those today, but you might want to, as we're doing our exercise today, you might want those sheets near so that you can recognize maybe some feelings that you're feeling, but you don't know how to put them into words. So that's what that is for. And then you'll want your essential oil or your regular oil or lotion or whatever you use. We'll do a little bit of physical grounding first. And then maybe you want your anchor. So I use a smooth river rock that I got out of the Sierras when we go hiking. So this is one of my anchors. So just in case while we're doing the exercise, you maybe get triggered or you need something to hang on to or reach onto, so you can grab your anchor. So those are the things that we're going to need today. Let's go ahead and start with our physical grounding. Go ahead and grab your essential oil and maybe use a few drops. I made up a new one for summer, so it's got a little bit of pine and some lemongrass and some orange oil, a few drops of patchouli. What else do I have in there? Some sage. Put a little bit of that on your feet. And then with one foot, go ahead and start at your toes and the ball of your foot and working your way back towards your heel. So maybe getting the arch. And as we're doing this, we'll do a little bit of interoception. So that means that we're going to attach the body and the mind. So as you are doing this, as you are coming in contact with your feet, with your own skin, with all those nerve endings that happen down at your foot, maybe you recognize what you're feeling. Recognize where you are feeling things at. So, and it may be totally different than last week, or than when we do the other side. It might be totally different on your other foot. But just becoming aware, not panicking, not freaking out, nothing like that, but just becoming aware. But also give yourself props, like become aware and recognize, I am aware, I can feel this, I know what is going on. So that's a very good exercise too. And apparently the new oil attracts the bees. So, well, I'm also right next to the lavender bush, but all right, let's go ahead and switch our feet to taking it to the other side or other foot, starting at the toes and working your way back towards your heel. So also, if this is triggering for you, if this is a triggering exercise, then go ahead and fast forward through this. You do not have to do this. Any of the practices, the exercises, any of the things that we do in these videos, you have a choice, you have the strength, you have the courage. You can fast forward through, you can do what you need to do to make it work for you. So that's what I'm hoping, that these videos, that they give you choice, and they empower you to choose the things that you want to do. So working back towards that heel, maybe recognizing if you feel different on this side, just becoming aware, and then maybe a little bit of the ankle and the calf. Very nice. And so now we're going to spiritually ground. So yesterday I started the 40 days of prayer, and I'm using Amy Carmichael, her prayer. So today's devotional, I learned about leaning, and then I learned about leaning can mean trust, and this is at Amy Carmichael devotion, but she talks about leaning, and then leaning being part of trust. And then so you look up trust, what trust is, the definition, and trust is reliance on the integrity or strength or ability of something or someone. Leaning. So there's a lot of Psalms and Proverbs and in Isaiah, all of these verses that are encouraging, that show examples of leaning, that show examples of how God is strength, is shield, is rock, something solid to lean against, something of reliance, something that has integrity, something that is, again, strong. So I'll just go through a few of the verses. Psalms 13:5, but I trust your unfailing love. Psalm 32:10, but the Lord's unfailing love surrounds the man or woman who trusts him. Psalms 56:3, when I am afraid, I will trust in you. Isaiah 2:2, surely God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. Isaiah 26:3-4, you will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast, because he trusts in you. Trust the Lord forever, for the Lord is the rock eternal. And then Psalms 28:7, the Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him. I love those pictures. The Lord is the rock, the shield, the strength. And then there's one part that was just super profound to me today. It was just this major image. So in John, when they're all sitting around the table and Jesus suddenly becomes quiet and says, one of you among me is going to betray me. John, the beloved of Jesus, is leaning, he's reclining next to Jesus. And when Jesus says this, Simon Peter over there looks to John, who's right next to Jesus, and says, ask him what he means, or ask him who he means. And John leans into Jesus and asks him that detrimental question, asks him the fearful question. But I thought that was so, I was trying to figure it out. It was so incredible that in the Bible, God actually used words to say somebody leaned on Jesus. And you can take it for whatever you want, but I just thought that was such an incredible image, especially because it was probably one of the scariest and most powerful times for those guys that were sitting with Jesus, thinking, who is it going to be? Who is it among us? Can you just imagine your heart dropping when Jesus says, one of you? And so for Simon Peter to ask John and be like, ask him who it is. And then for John to lean, and probably lean in concern and in fear and in anxiety. But he leaned into Jesus and asked this question. So as we are facing the anxiety of the world, as we are facing what is going on, as we are facing things that are fearful, things that we don't understand, as we are listening to things that we've never heard before, let us lean into God, lean into Jesus, lean against him, and ask him the question out of fear. It's okay. I think that's kind of what I took the most from it. Okay, so we're going to move on now to our psychotherapy, to our grounding. We're going to talk about triggers and identifying our triggers. So grab your journal, grab your markers, your pen, your whatever you use to write with, whatever you are using. And we're going to identify triggers. So this is an exercise that we're going to use. So first, we're going to identify the trigger. And then, so go ahead and write this part down. Write down 1, what thoughts, and then leave some space. And then 2, what physical response, and then leave some space. And then 3, what emotional response, and leave some space. And then 4, where do you think that that response comes from? Or where do you think that that root is for that trigger? So you're going to use this a lot of times. You're going to use the what thoughts, what physical response, what emotional response, and what do you think comes from it. So you'll be writing that over and over and over. And I will tell you to pause, and then you can pause and write this down. So our first part of the exercise is what sound triggers you. So what sound triggers you? So figuring out what sound, or sounds, plural, what trigger you. For example, lately especially, fireworks. Fireworks and gunshots have been very triggering for me. So now, what thoughts? What thoughts come when I am triggered by that sound? Fear, sudden anger, anxiety. What is my physical response? Tense. I tense up. My body goes cold and then hot. What is my emotional response? Anger, feeling powerlessness, frustration. Where do you think that that comes from? So for me, my abuse didn't occur when there was any noise or anything like that I can remember. But because of the PTSD that I have, that resulted from the abuse, part of PTSD is being hypervigilant. It's being very sensitive to sound, to noise, slamming doors, that sort of thing. So I know that that is where that is coming from. That loud noise, that boom, that slam. It comes from the PTSD. It's one of the symptoms, and so I can recognize that. So that's our sound. So that's number 1. Go ahead and pause if you need to write this down. So go ahead and do your sound and pause that. Okay, next is, what are the smells that trigger you? So what smell triggers you? Smells, smell. What thoughts go along with that smell? What is your physical response to that smell? What is your emotional response to that smell? And where do you think that that comes from? What is the root? And again, it could be, you may not be able to pinpoint it, and it could be part of the PTSD reaction or response. So go ahead and pause and figure out your smells. Now, the next one, number 3. What things do you see that trigger you? So for me, I'll use the example of violence on TV or movies. I know when I was doing some of my intense work, I had loved to watch Law & Order and Law & Order SVU. But when I was doing my super intense work on sexual violence, sexual abuse in my own life, I recognized that I could not watch those shows because they were intensely triggering for me and caused major anxiety. I can watch them now without that, but that was a trigger for me at that point. So recognize, what things do you see that trigger you? What are the thoughts that come with that? What is the physical response? What is the emotional response? And where does it come from? So go ahead and press pause and go through your, what do you see? What are things that you see that trigger you? The next one is, what places trigger you? So these next ones, these next few, they depend on your experience. They depend on what trauma happened to you. It depends on what is your root, the root of your triggers. So what places trigger you? So again, depending on if your abuse occurred at a specific place or if it occurred at a general area, like say at one beach, but you can't go to any of the other beaches. So something like that. So what places trigger you, and what's your thoughts? What is your physical response? What is your emotional response? And where does it come from? So go ahead and pause and write out what places trigger you. Next, what faces, people or faces trigger you. Now this can be, this is a huge one, and again, this has a lot to do with your experience, depending on what you went through, what happened to you. And this may be very private. So there may be specific things that you might feel shameful of saying, this kind of person triggers me, or this kind of face triggers me. Like sometimes Santa Claus triggers me because my abuser was a larger man with a rounder face, so things like that trigger. So what are your thoughts that come when you see the people or the faces? What is your physical response to the people or faces? What is your emotional response to the people or faces? And then where does that come from? What is that root? You can press pause and go through that. What is the people or places or people or faces? Next is what time of day, and you may not have a time of day, what time of day, what day of the week, or what season of the year may trigger you. So for me, I don't actually have a time of day, day of week, or season, but what I do have is I have specific months. So now finding your time of day, your day of week, your time of year, or your month, what thoughts come with that, what physical response, what emotional response, and where does it come from? What is that root? And then finally, and you can put a pause, and finally, what things are said that trigger you. And there may be various words, there may be a specific phrase that your abuser said, there may be a specific phrase that your perpetrator said, or that there may have been a song on the radio during your abuse or your trauma, or whatever was going on that is a root for you, or a song. What is that trigger? What thoughts does that bring to you? What physical response? Like for me, when I hear the word stupid, that physical response is almost the same as when I hear a loud boom or a door slam that I am not aware is going to happen. So it's that same, like all of a sudden, that hot and that cold, that anger, that fear, that frustration. So that's the physical response. And then emotional response. What is your emotional response to the words, phrase, song? And then again, where does that come from? What is the root? So you've written down, you've probably got pages of this stuff, but that's so good because this is your, kind of like your cheat sheet, or this is your, at the end, I'm horrible in math, but at the end of the math book, there was always the answers to the odd questions. So this is your answers to the odd questions. This, what you have just written down, is your key. We have new neighbors, and I think there's a dog behind us. I was just walking by. Anyway, so this will be so useful for you for a long time. That's why it's important maybe to put this in your journal so that you can continue to use this over and over. Here's the next part of the exercise. Now, from all of these triggers, choose the one that you struggle with the most right now. Choose the one that today, this is what triggered you. Today, this is your trigger. Go ahead and choose that one. So, once you've chosen today's trigger, and again tomorrow, maybe a different trigger. So we'll begin to use this exercise for tomorrow, the next day. So after you've chosen your trigger to work with, now we're going to choose the tool to use on that trigger. So our tools include the techniques or the things that you have learned on this channel, the things that you have learned maybe from your own therapy. So these things include your breathing. They include the grounding, becoming present, the sight, the smell, the things that you use to become present, like the oil, bringing yourself back, the breathing. So another technique is positive self-talk, reminding yourself who you are. You are seen, you are heard, you are valuable, you are important, you have a voice, you have a choice. Your positive self-talk. Another technique is the tapping. Maybe meditation is another technique, and relaxation or yoga, whatever you use. So now you found your trauma that you're going to work with today. Now choose your tool that you're going to work with today. So choose your tool, and maybe write your tools down. Choose that tool. So now this is how we process through this. So you've figured out your triggers, now you've chosen your trigger, and now you've chosen your tool. So this is what you write down right here, this bottom part. And you can pause that and look at that. So this is my trigger blank. So I'm going to say my trigger today is the sound. I'll do a valid one because every night, I don't know about you, but every night, fireworks, gunshots, boom, boom, boom. This is my trigger that I'm going to work with. Now the next, this is what I expect to experience, blank. I expect to experience fear, anger, frustration. I know this because I've written it down. I've processed through it. This is what tool I am going to use to combat it. So today I will use breathing. I will use the breathing tool. And this is how I am going to use my tool when I get triggered. So tonight, when I hear the loud boom, I will expect to experience that sudden anger, that frustration, that fear. I've decided I'm going to use my breathing, and this is how I'm going to use my breathing. Wherever I'm at, whatever space I'm in, it's usually when I'm laying down, I will find myself in the present and use my breathing. So that is how we process through our triggers. And this is such a valuable tool that you can use just over and over and over. And you've made it easy because you've sat down and you've recognized these are the triggers for all of this stuff. These are the things that I can use for the triggers. And then this is how I expect to feel, and this is how I'm going to use it when it happens. So now after this, you're going to evaluate. So this is your homework. This is the homework part for afterwards. So number one, and I'll put this up here so you can look at that and pause it. So how did my strategy or tool work? Blank. Talk about how that was. How successful did I feel when I used it? What changes or adjustments can I make to the tool that will help me better, that will help me more? You guys, these exercises, doing this specific exercise, this is one of the ways that you take your control back. This is the way that you can control in all of the things that are out of control right now, in all of the things that have been happening with quarantine, with COVID, now with like violence and unrest. This is something you can control. This is how you take your control back. This is how you get your power back, when you are feeling powerless, when you are feeling like you are not being heard, when you are feeling invisible, this is how you get your power back. You are being proactive. You are being your own advocate. And this is how you get your voice back. By learning about yourself, by learning how to take care of yourself, by learning about the things that trigger you, you have your voice and you can make choices depending now on that. Do you decide to go to a specific place knowing that it's going to trigger you? You either prepare yourself for it or you decide, no, I'm not going to go there yet, not until I've become stronger. This is how you get your voice back. This is how you make your choices. So I want to encourage you to practice this today, to use this exercise to get your power, your control, your voice back. So let's go ahead and practice some breathing today. And let's do some slow breathing. So let's do some inhale for 6, let's hold for 7, and exhale for 8. So this is a practice that's very good for the nervous system. It's very good, especially when highly anxious, because it will very slowly bring you back to the present. This is something that I would use for the booming, for the fireworks. So finding a space that's comfortable for you, maybe rocking it a little bit to center yourself, maybe a little front to back, to get your brain centered, to get your brain calm. Because remembering that this primal movement, this front and back, this side to side, begins to release endorphins. It's a soothing movement. So let's begin to breathe. You can use your arms or you don't have to. Like, you do what works for you. So let's inhale it for 6. So inhale it for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Hold it for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale it for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good, let's do that again. Inhale it for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale it for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now you may feel dizzy. Recognize what you're feeling as you're breathing. No fear, no panic, just awareness. Let's do it one more time. Inhale it for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale it for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you for taking this time to practice your self-care, to learn grounding tools. Like I said, yesterday I started 40 days of prayer. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to pray. Remember that you are seen, that you are heard. You are so valuable and you are important. You have a voice and you have a choice. You can't control what others do. You can't control what others say. You can't control the actions that others take. But you can control how you respond. You can control the information that you choose to take in. You can control the information that you choose to give away. You can control the words that you choose to give to other people. Those are the things that you can control. So I hope that you have a blessed day, and I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to pray an awesome prayer for today. You can join in the prayer or you can be done for the day. All right. My Father, you welcome me into your presence, and that's a wonder in itself, more than I can imagine. Then you invite me to lean in against you. A bolt of self-reliance in me resists this, but I want to trust you. I want to relax. I want the weight of my fears and anxiety to lean against you, to rest, to know how fully trustworthy you are. Help me, Father. I reach for your hand. I feel for your firm grip, and I lean my weight against you now. In your name, amen. Okay, Sammy, what do you want to say? What do you want to say?
Love you.
Love you. What else do you want to say?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good boy.